Today's presentation's topic is wives, widows, and wayward women. I'm going to leave it to the presenters to present themselves. I'm going to give them each 1 minute to just give their name and something about themselves before we start.
So the second one?
Yes.
All right, Gabriel, Kosiso, Okonkwo. I'm a postdoc in the Department of Literary Studies in English. And yeah, I'm here to make my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is B. I'm a researcher in the Psychiatry chain, Sexualities, Genders, and Queer Studies, University of Fort Hare. Yeah, thanks.
Hello everyone, my name is Zikho. I'm an NGAP lecturer at the External Studies Department and a PhD candidate at the Political and International Studies Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Zikho, I think you first. And you
First, okay. But I need to connect something. Okay.
Sure.
No, this is only here. But I need to have access of something. Apologies for that. Okay, so the title of my talk is titled Dadobawo, Sicel, Amandla, Okanye, Ndinxila, Udadobawo, the rich aunt phenomena or movement and forced maternal duties. So I introduced this paper by stating that it seeks to challenge the notion that all good women are mothers by repositioning Udadobawo, whether she is a mother or not, married or not, rich or poor, as a pivotal institution in the family whose role must not be reduced to that of an economic provider and or caregiver, but she should be a member of the family and greater community who is intrinsic to the well-being of the family and community. So this paper uses isiXhosa along with a few terms from Shona and Sesotho as a source of information and knowledge, and uses these languages with the aim of reasserting them as sources of knowledge. So Masego informs us or claims that, unlike other disciplines which have their origins in European epistemologies, studying the lexicon of the language can be arguably more reliable, in which, and I quote, one can make assumptions and inferences about its speakers past and present. Okay, so above all, language shapes and influences people's thoughts and thus their interpretation of the world. So I'm cognizant of the fact that in my study of isiXhosa and other African languages, I may not fully recover or reconstruct the pre-colonial experiences of Africans, particularly AmaXhosa. But I am mindful of the possibilities that remnants of linguistic evidence that still remain may have may have in the reclamation and construction of an equitable present and future. But I'm also mindful of the fact that I am not trying to romanticize pre-colonial African life, right? I'm not arguing that it was not patriarchal, but I'm just saying that it has lessons for us that we could use in constructing an equitable society in which we can all live in. But I will elaborate on this further. So I also show that in this, so this is the case even amid semantic shifts that have occurred to certain terms, usually for the expediency of certain hegemonic socio-economic and socio-political formations where power and dominance are central. So I draw on Bibi Bakari Yusuf's analysis of Oyeronke Oyewumi's book titled The Invention of Women, Making an African Sense of Western Gender Discourses. So Yusuf argues or warns us that language in and of itself does not capture the full sense of reality as it is lived, right? And it conceals as much as it reveals about power. So I am mindful about the nexus between language and power. And I'm also not, romanticizing the language or social linguistic discipline as the bearer of knowledge which others cannot go into, but I will go into deeper in depth about this. So in my quest to relocate the complex and contentious role of Udadobawo, I rely on the work of Babalo Makokwana, particularly her article titled Repositioning Umakhulu as an Institution of Knowledge Beyond Biologism Towards Umakhulu as the Body of Knowledge. So I do this along with Upamela Maseko's article titled Language as a Source of Revitalization and Reclamation of Indigenous Epistemologies, contesting the assumptions and reimagining women identities in African or Xhosa society. So this comes from a book that was edited by Professor Ndinxila and two other editors. So I think the title of the book is Whose History Counts? But I think it's an important book that we could all look into for further information. So I do this with the aim of reclaiming the significant roles of women within the contemporary African cosmology and society. So I also attempt to look at maternal legacies as care or cognitive work, but I hope to show that as I go deeper into the presentation. So I conclude by showing that Udadobawo cannot and should not be ignored or relegated to the realm of unusefulness as deemed by a heteropatriarchal neo-colonial capitalist society that was imposed on the African world sense. So by relying on African feminist lenses, I seek to challenge the neo-traditionalist views, which are also concealed as African culture. So their view is that, it limits the role of women and what they do in society. Lastly, I turn to the Rich Aunt movement for a potential solution of how women can reassert themselves in their families and communities while taking care of themselves so that they do not end up setting themselves on fire to keep others warm. Okay. So like Makokwana, this paper will reclaim Udadobawo as an institution of knowledge which is significant in the recreation of a society grounded on Ubuntu, rather than valuing or devaluing of one's body based on colonial interventions which were and to some degree are still being extrapolated into the African world sense. In one of the Author for Fridays hosted by Nelson Mandela's Center for Women and Gender Studies, keynote speaker Brigalia Bam made the point that society is in shambles and has reduced the role of women and girls as that of men's auxiliaries or objects that can be used and disposed as much as the patriarchal system deems fit, right? So she also talks about how some women are also complicit in how other women are treated badly, and I think the term for that is called patriarchal princesses, but I stand to be corrected. So she makes the warning or the analysis that because asisatombisi, which is we no longer perform girls' rite of passage into womanhood, things are going astray. So this means that women's spaces that enhance their womanhood and personhood have been replaced by imposed spaces such as the church and school, where they're indoctrinated to accept their subjugation. Equally so, these spaces have also been transformed by women into equitable spaces for them, where they can challenge and resist their subjugation, where they have made substantial gains, but these spaces remain spaces of violence as the pushback against women's liberation persists. I know we can have various examples that we can use, but I'd go to the Fears Must Fall example, where we were all fighting for a decolonial free education, but equally so in these same spaces where we were fighting with our so-called male counterparts and comrades, we also had to fight patriarchy and the persistence of rape culture. But I won't go into detail because of the scope of this article. So uNomalanga Mkhize and Maternal in their article titled When Amalungelo Are Not Enough, an autoethnographic search for African feminist idiom in the post-colony. So they try to put it clear as to why this languaging or the use of the term amalungelo is so problematic in a so-called African sense or African culture. So they claim that amalungelo take on negative connotation. That's not only because they have not been contextually constructed, but also because they offend present-day patriarchal sensibilities, which see African women as having been timelessly submissive or compliant. So when I'm borrowing from this work, right, still drawing on the Fears Must Fall movement and example, you know, when women were talking against rape culture and rape or any form of sexual assault, there was the notion that they're being anti-African or they're destroying the black man. And I know that this is quite popular on social media. Whenever a woman claims that a famous man or a man, so-called influential man has sexually assaulted her, particularly if this man is a black man, it comes back to, oh, look at these women dividing the black community. But we'll come back to that. So I also look at how Udadobawo as Umafungwashe is an important person and institution, right? So here Udadobawo in isiXhosa is called, okay, can be translated from English to isiXhosa as the paternal aunt. So here using Udadobawo, who is Umafungwashe, which is the eldest daughter, she is father's sister, but in this paper I illuminate a spotlight on the eldest Dadobawo, who is also Umafungwashe, the eldest daughter, who is the woman custodian of her paternal family. She occupies a significant position in her family. One, not a single man in her family can challenge, as hers is also spiritual. She has the task of overseeing various activities in the family. Chief among these is to teach the younger family members about their lineage, their culture, provides counsel for disgruntled married couples and economic prosperity, among other things. Above all, Udadobawo occupies a position in her family that no one can and should attempt to take over, as she is divinely appointed. So going back to Maseko explains that the nature of social stratification among Amaxhosa by stating that the words that name members of a society are linked. For example, they are linked to responsibility, seniority, rank, and status. Oh, it took 10 minutes. Okay. So these terms are linked to responsibility, seniority, rank, and status of that member. And they are not connected or linked to the physiology of the person bearing the name, right? So Umehlwana also attests to this by stating that Udadobawo is not merely the father's sister, but she is the female father. Like the Rakhadi from Abasotho, Udadobawo is as powerful, if not more powerful than men from her family, as she commands respect in the homestead as the overseer of the home and the community. This is what Umthunzikazi Mbungwana refers to as Umveleli Wekhaya. She will elaborate on that. I'm looking forward to her paper. So, without her blessing, a ritual within the family can be put to a standstill, especially if she is dissatisfied with the way the ritual has been conducted. In her foundational years, Pamela Maseko grew up with the knowledge that certain people possess profound knowledge and understanding of issues relating to society, regardless of whether they were men or women. This is the case with Udadobawo. So the body in which she exists in is not a deterrent to her abilities to serve her family and community. even though it has come to be normalized among Africans that there are certain spaces that a woman is not allowed in, mainly because she is umfazi, a woman. So this phenomenon does not account for the role that women play, it does not account for the role that women play in the creation of these spaces in the first place, as she may even be the one who purchased the cattle and bought the material to build the very same kraal that she is prohibited from entering. You can also see Mthunzikazi's Nonga Indoda in her collection of poems titled Unamwena. So she also talks to how Unonga Indoda, even though she is not neither man or woman, she says Unonga Indoda ingumntu, but she has to bury her father. She has to wash her father's corpse. She has to take her nephews through the initiation process by buying the important cattle that has to be slaughtered for this process. But I digress. That's not my work. So I return to Unoxola Mdende as she explains that in much of the literature, the word woman is narrowly defined to mean a married female. As a result, some scholars say women are tabooed from entering the cattle kraal. But women who are born within the clan, irrespective of age, participate in ritual performances inside their own clan's kraal, and they have no boundaries. So it is widely common for a woman to be prohibited to enter a bushland or cattle enclosure, whatever term you prefer, because she is a woman, and some of it is affiliated with her menstrual cycles and the lifespan of the prosperity of the animals in the kraal. This doesn't have any scientific evidence, but we'll let the neo-traditionalists be. So Mkhize and Jege explain that neo-traditionalists reimagine and modernize oppressive gender norms by drawing on any selection of self-serving religious, cultural, and political ideologies. So to make this clear, Maseko explains that the words like umfazi, which can be translated to a great mortal, umfo, a mortal, which can be translated to a man, umfana can be translated to young man, and umfazana, a newly married great mortal, young mortal, which can be translated to a bride or whichever term you use, are all derived from the verb fa, which is to die. So what these terms have in common are mortality, but in the English equivalence of these terms, the focus is solely on the maleness and femaleness of their bearers. In hindsight, there is a semantic shift that has occurred in the use of these terms among Amaxhosa, as they are used to focus solely on gender and thus lead to the social organization of the people to be based on their gender rather than their responsibilities and capabilities. The preoccupation of gender then leads to certain beings or mortals benefiting from beauties and rewards that are not rightfully theirs to claim, while compelling certain mortals to live in the margins or are brought in when there are emergencies that require their assistance. Okay, let me clarify this by making an example. So there was a public-private family matter that occurred in the Mandela family. Yes, Nelson Mandela's family, the famous one. So in 2011, Mandla Mandela, who is the grandson of Nelson Mandela and Evelyn Mandela, whose surname was Mase. So he exhumed the remains of his family members from Vezo to Kuno. These were the remains of his father, Umakhato Mandela, his aunt and uncle, Umadiba Tembekile Mandela, without the consent or permission or knowledge of his family. This exhumation of these bodies sparked a family feud between Mandla and his aunt Magaziwe. Magaziwe is Nelson Mandela and Evelyn Mandela's eldest surviving child from his first marriage. So the case was taken to the Mthatha High Court, where Mandla was ordered to rebury the remains of his family members in the Kunu family home, as this was the case prior to the exhumation. So Noxola Mdende helps us to understand or make sense of what occurred in this debacle between Magaziwe and Mandela by stating that, and I quote, which is Mandla Mandela, his exclusion of his Udadobawo, father's sister, not aunt, is a mistake. He said that because she is married, she must not be involved with the Mandela issues. Magaziwe is umfazi, a married woman to her husband's family, but she is an intombi to the Mandela family. She has specific roles to play. Magaziwe, as the only surviving child of Madiba's first marriage, has the right to intervene when she sees something going astray. Close quote. So Umdende further explains that Magaziwe is Mandla's father in the true sense of of the word, without looking at her gender, right? So this is to say that regardless of Magaziwe's gender, her role is to assume family duties as the overseer of the family. She is a physical representation of leadership in her family. Of course, she does not embody this as an individual. This is in conjunction with other family members, both women and men. Okay, so looking at this example, so umafungwashe is lo ufungwa ngaye ekhaya. This role or position can also be hijacked overtaken by the younger sister, who is also Udadobawo, especially one who is richer. So the younger Dadobawo can then claim to be umafungwashe wekhaya because of her position due to economic wealth. Okay, so the position of Udadobawo is one due to certain, that it can be, as I said, hijacked because of economic matters. So linguist Gugumkiza explains that even the younger sisters tend to assume the role of umafungwashe if they are wealthier. So it is important to note that even the younger and female fathers are Udadobawo, but yeah, I've already said that. So I come to Urachadi from Abesutu and Tete from the Shona. So in attempting to understand why Rachadi has so much power, Ntabin Hlapho consulted cultural expert from TUT, Okonkwo, who claimed that Rachadi is seen as the voice of cohesion among her siblings and family in its entirety. So Mokoko further explicated that the eldest aunt, culturally speaking, is supposed to be the one who resolves issues among siblings when they disagree. She is also the one who is closest to the parents and other key relatives in the family. Therefore, the relationship between Rachadi and a woman who comes into the family as a new wife to one of Rachadi's brothers is incredibly vital. So among Amaxhosa, Rachadi becomes Indodakazi. So like Rachadi, Tete is an important and powerful woman. As Rutende Kututwa explains that Tete is a paternal aunt and holds an important role in the family of being a woman who advises her nieces and nephews, but also who can play a marriage counselor for her brother and Mururo, which is her sister-in-law. Okay, so I come to the concept of Udadobawo and care work. So there is a common saying among Amaxhosa that ingcwaba lentombazana lisemzini. This is to say that the girl's grave is in her marital household or homestead. So this term or saying reiterates patriarchal traces among Amaxhosa, which seeks to banish the daughter to places outside their home, which then displaces the position of Udadobawo, as this means that she has limited say on what happens in her maiden home, as there is an expectation that she should be married and exert her authority in her marital home. Okay, 4 times up. Okay, can I just go to the conclusion? Okay, so coming to the rich aunt phenomena. So I borrow from Kensani Muhlatrole's traces as she looks at the American television show called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where she looks at the character of Vivian Banks, who is also affectionately known as Aunt Viv, who is played by Janet Hobert, right? So this is a woman who, Aunt Viv, was always dressed in designer clothing as she enjoyed the leisurely, self-fulfilling pursuits that were exclusive to upper-class women. So this speaks to Pumla Gola's, the new South African woman, even though in this context Aunt Viv was unmarried, right? So coming to how young South African women have appropriated this role and continue to make sense of it, I argue that in contemporary South Africa and Africa at large, the rich aunt movement has found its way to social media, where young and old women are adding their own interpretation of the rich aunt movement and reality, which allows them an ability to reimagine their lives, where women are forced to live precarious lives under precarious economic conditions, with the constant threat of poverty, gender-based violence, and marginalization. Illuminating the rich aunt aesthetic provides a sartorial reprieve from the grim, harsh realities of what it is to be a black woman in South Africa. So I come back to the title of the presentation where it says Dadobawo Sicela Amandla. Okay, bye. Okay, thank you.
You can say one sentence.
One sentence, ne?
Yeah.
So using the songs Dadobawo Sicela Amandla, which is Dadobawo we're asking for power or asking for blessings, I argue that Udadobawo is an important person and institution in a family. But then, knowing the challenges that women have to live under, one can also argue that Ndinxila Ndifuz Udadobawo, which is also a song which says, I am a drunkard as much as my aunt is, because trying to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm will lead to other social ills that maybe you could turn to alcohol just to numb the pain. I hope I made my point. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Bellita.
Okay, I think I will stand.
Yes.
Iconic. Because if I'm sitting, I'm feeling a bit stifled. Okay. Is it on? Okay. Okay, good morning once again. My name is Bellita, but I prefer to be called Miss B. Yeah. Yes, please. Okay, I'm just waiting for the computer to log on because there's a song that I would love to play before we start. Please come. Need the password. My presentation. So basically this song, Neria, I'm sure most of you know Oliver Mtukudzi, the late Oliver Mtukudzi. So this is a song that he sang when he was singing, let me say, on behalf of the widows that they'd lost, their husbands, to say, Usaore moyo Neria, it means don't lose heart. God is with you. We know that life has got its ups and downs, but don't lose heart. So as I begin, this is actually a personal story of my life and of what I've gone through and how I eventually arrived at where I am today. So I start off by saying that marriage is no chain. It is actually a mutual agreement over a life's program. And my own story is but different because like 3 months down the lane, I felt I was in shackles. The ink was not even yet, the ink wasn't even dry in my marriage certificate, and how was I going to go back to my family and tell them that I want out of this? It meant that I was actually going to put shame not only on my face, but also in my family. Because you know, the moment when you don that wedding gown with its innocence and everything, it comes with so many responsibilities, you know, in it. So the dating part, it was great. I was brought up in church, and you're told you have to keep yourself until you get married. So when I found someone who was saying they want to get married to me, it was a joy and pleasure, you know, to my family. Everybody was happy about it. And those that come from Zimbabwe, you know, the celebrations, you know, around that. So the day finally arrives and I get married. I'm in my white gown and everything is good. And then I'm actually, we get married and I'm taken to my husband's home. Don't get me wrong, the guy, he worshipped the ground that I walked in.
Yes.
He loved me. He was fine. He was older than me, but he loved me. He brought himself down, you know, to my age. We worshipped together. We literally did everything together. By then, we were what we would call like the it couple.
Yes.
But then 3 months down the line, all of a sudden he's sick, like very, very sick. I'm wondering, okay, what's happening? How did I not see all the signs, you know, and everything? And then, so I called my parents and then also called the family members, and then they came. And I'm glad because you talked about the issue of Vatete in the Shona culture. Actually, we call it Vatete in the Shona culture, yes. So then they came, he's lying there in our bedroom, and they're talking in hush-hush voices, you know, and everything. So now they call me and then they say, I'm still very young, by the way, I'm around 19 going 20. So, and then they called me and then they told me to say, okay, we've decided to take him home, let him go home and you know, die there because we can see this guy is like seriously ill. So actually, before I even go there, my work is actually situated in the pedagogy of the oppressed and also the black feminist theory by Collins. So you find that with the black feminist theory, it actually allows me to share my fears, feelings, and experiences as a black widow in a gendered society. And Patricia also advocates for reflection and writing as it assists in describing and analyzing one's experiences. Thus, not only do I write to reflect on what I enjoyed, but I also write as a form of healing, thinking, and feeling. So working with the feminist paradigm actually allows me, you know, not only, it allows me to put, you know, out there the recognition of women's experiences, and that they can actually be a source of scholarly knowledge, validation, and empowerment. So yeah, so that is where my work is actually anchored on. So anyway, so they told me that they're going to take Shinurai to home, you know, and then so that since he's sick and everything, probably maybe he's going to die there. So actually my dad is the one who actually intervened to say, no, let's take this guy to the hospital. You know, I think it would be best to take him to the hospital. We find out what is wrong with him. So eventually we took him to the hospital. And then in obvious case, you know, when you go to the hospital, when doctors don't know what is wrong with you, they'll run the test, right? So then they did the test. And then that is when now the results came out to show that she was HIV positive. So you know, like they'll call you now as the wife to say, there's something that we need to discuss with you because this is something that is very confidential. So when they told me, then I said, I'm keeping this to myself. I'm not going to tell anyone about this. How can I, anyway? So I kept it to myself. And that's what they're like, what is wrong with him? Then I said, no, there's something wrong with his blood and everything. And remember, during that time, coming out as an HIV positive person was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was terrible. You know, the stigma, the discrimination around that, and even going to the hospital to say you're looking for medication and all those things, those are the things that you couldn't even get. So you actually had to rely, on using, your own cash and supplements, to do that. I was filled, with fear. I was scared. And, as Lord says that, for we've been socialized, especially women, to respect fear more than our own needs. While we wait in silence for that final luxury of fearlessness, the weight of that silence will kill us. And as such, I was dying inside, but how could I? I couldn't. So, when I look back, I remember when I was talking with Princess. In fact, this work comes from the time when we booked ourselves at Royal St. Andrews, with Prof. Matebeni and Princess. So we're just talking. That is when everything started coming to say, look, I think I need to talk about this. So in total, I remember, I didn't know this thing was just going to go on and off for the next 10 years. And in total, I remember my husband being admitted in 9 different hospitals that I had to go through. Most of them now, by then, we've moved here to South Africa. And still, none of the family knew what was wrong with him. I think they even suspected, but no one had the guts to tell us, straight into our faces to say, look, we know this is what is wrong. I mean, all the signs were there. And I think it was during that time that a part of me was, and probably still angry, because I remember during that time, even if when I asked him to say, did you know about this? He said, no, he didn't know. So it was my sister, my elder sister, who's in Joburg, who one day she just called me and then she says, at home they call, my full name is Bellita, by the way. So at home they call me Be. So she just called me, then she said, Be, go and get tested. Mm-hmm. So then I went and then I got myself tested, and I don't know, even up to today, I think, was it God, was it his Nyanya Zami, or whatever, who happened to be a discordant couple. If discordant couple means like you can be living with someone who's got HIV/AIDS, but the virus doesn't touch your blood at all. So anyway, so that was it. But it got to a point whereby I said, look, I'm tired of this marriage. I want out. So I left, and then I joined my sister in South Africa, and he followed me. That was after a year. And then when I saw him, he was looking so frail and so sickly. And being who I am again and my sister, I took him back. You see, so it goes back, to what we go through as women. And like when I started to say, it's that issue whereby when you sit down when you're getting married, your parents will always tell you, but whether you just have to stick in there. So I took him back. I'm staying with my sister. Then, with South Africa, the medical system, it's on point, that we cannot deny. So he picked. And by then, he couldn't even tell. We kind of forgot that this is somebody that is infected and has got a chronic disease. Life was good. And then I was working as a waitress. Before I actually did all this, until I did my PhD, I worked as a waitress at Menlyn Park. I was working as a waitress at Menlyn Park in Pretoria. And then one of the universities advertised. He was an educated guy. He applied to get a job. And then so we to move to where I still remained, in Alice, UFH. And by then we're like, okay, why don't you try for a baby? I think you think I'm crazy here. And we did try for a baby, and we've got a son who's going 15 now, and we named him Gift. But then, soon after I had the baby, the nightmare started again. And like this time I could see there was no turning back. He got sick, and I was admitted in hospital. Then they said it's septicemia, and then I was operated. And then by the time when he passed on, he had, his right leg was crippled on his right leg. So it was this thing of on and off and everything, and we tended to live a very secluded life. And it's during that point that I really felt I was carrying those 6 mountains on my back. I couldn't speak. I know, like they always say, that the mutes can always speak, but during that time, I just couldn't speak or do anything. So after some time, he passed on after spending some days in the ICU. I think it was a week plus. And then that was when like the whole nightmare started, because I knew I had to go home. They come from home. They know what happens when your husband has died. And remember where we are, we have to travel something like 2,000 plus kilometers driving. So every time when I look back, I could literally see, the trailer behind me carrying his body. And I can't cry because I know what is waiting for me when I get home, So we went there, we got home, and then after getting home, what made me so mad, that's why I write to say the diary of a made Black Zimbabwean widow, was like after all the formalities are done, then I was asked to stand up to say, in loose translation, tell us what happened to our son.
Who is wind?
You see? So it is at that moment where the anger comes in to say, look, I'm the one who has been up and down with this guy all these years. I'm the one who has done A, B, C, D, and I think I'm the one who actually took care of him until, he reached the stage where he is. And so where do you get, like the audacity to tell me that, please tell us what happened to our son. And then it reminds me of what this other scholar says, who says that, who posits that more often than not, the widow finds herself being accused of having deliberately contributed to the cause of her husband's death. That is Mwandai and Chirongoma. Hence, as I write this, I also seek to interrogate, the killer suspicion that is always leveled against women. And at this moment, all that I could think of was the betrayal of trust. In as much as my relationship with my in-laws was not a bed of roses, never did I expect them, to come up with this thing of saying, tell us what happened to our son. Hudson sums it all up and says, traditional viewpoints, remain overpowering and overbearing, and therefore they make a woman to lose her voice. So anyway, this went on, the burial went well, and then I stayed in the village, and then I remember one day, then they were discussing to say, we need to talk about his estate, and we need his death certificate. But then what they did, was that when somebody dies in South Africa, before you exit, they give you the death certificate. So they arranged everything, and then that was the time when I said, no, I think I need to speak up. Then I said to them, how will you go and get his death certificate in my absence? So when we went to the registry, I was just quiet. I had all the papers actually in photocopies, because all the other original papers, my passport and my child's passport, and even his own passport, I'd given them to my parents when they were going home. In fact, when my parents were going back home, I remember my mom and my aunt calling me saying, ukhumbule, because they told me speaking Ndebele, to say, ukhumbule ukuthi ufelwe, uyenze yonke into abayifunayo, because uhambo luseselulude. Meaning, don't forget that you're bereaved. You must do everything that they want, because you still have a long journey. So during that time also, I thought my mom was kind of betraying me to say, you are a woman, so how do you expect me to hang with this? You still have your husband, my own is what? Has died, and you're leaving me with these people to, to suffer on my own. So anyway, to cut the long story short, after some time, I told them I want to go home because I couldn't stand there and be there anymore. And custom demands, like when your husband has died, if you're asked to visit your family, you cannot go alone. You have to be accompanied by someone. But then they told me, they said, okay, it's fine. If you want to go, we cannot say no to you. It's okay, you can go. So I went, and then I'm just looking for the part where I wrote about when I was entering, when I was entering the bus, yes. Okay, so I told them I wanted to go home, and then I'll come back when I'm doing the memorial service. So I remember, I vividly recall when I entered the bus dressed in all black, how at that moment my sexuality was singled out, as Mampele Rampele would say, and how all the passengers went quiet. I mean, this was only me and my son walking inside the bus. Finding a seat was the longest journey ever. it is during that moment that I felt my individual loss, my pain was claimed and it was given public voice, quoting Mampele Rampele. My parents did not know that I was coming, so they were surprised when they saw me coming home. So after some time when I was home, we went back for Nyarazo, and then after a year, ordinarily, those black clothes, they're supposed to be removed by the family so that you continue with your life. So after a year, my family reached out to say, it's now a year, so the whole process is to be started. Then they said, no, there are some things that we're still putting up and everything. We'll tell you when we're ready. So I had to put on those black clothes for 2 years, literally. But what happened was that my supervisor, Prof. Rembe, she taught me honors, actually. She called me to say, come back to school. Then I said, Prof, but I cannot come because I'm still mourning. I'm on mourning clothes and everything, you know. Then she says, no, just come back to school. Talk to your family. So what happened, I talked to one of the closest grandmothers in the family, his family. Then she said to me, I'm the oldest grandmother, I'm giving you that right. Just remove those clothes. But when you're coming back to the village, make sure you put them on. So after 2 years, we went back, and then the traditional rites were done. And in those 2 years, I'd been told I'm not supposed to be sexually active. In those 2 years, you're not supposed to be sexually active in those 2 years until the 2 years is over. So the whole process that I want to talk about is the issue of saying Kukukaranaka, whereby now is the process whereby all the nephews and the uncles and everybody else, they are called in to come and sit, you know, the process to say you have to choose a husband there. So that is when I stood up to say, no, I do not want a husband at this moment. What I want, so I went, because the process says you go and wash the hands of the person that you want them to be happy. Yeah. So I just went and then I washed my son's hands, because I love to do that, to say I'll remain in the family for the sake of my son, but I don't want anything else to do with the with the family. So in quoting Maria Maba, who says that even after the demise of one spouse, a woman is expected to subject herself to death, patriarchalism, which is, very true. So in essence, you know, when I write this, I also want to quote Rampene again, who says, it is during all these rituals that a woman's body is turned into a focus of attention as both subject and object of mourning rituals. The individual suffering of a woman is made social, and the body becomes the metaphor for suffering. So this is a journey that I've gone through, and as I write this article, I find myself reliving the pain, the feelings of anger, the guilt, the resentfulness, the loneliness, the yearning, the sadness, the powerlessness of that being. By that time when this ritual was done, I was 31 years old. Of a town girl. This does not spare me that I was a town girl. And it is at this moment that I decided to choose, as I've said, my son over everybody else. In essence, as I conclude, death is something to fear, and in its culture is situated and constructed to detect the behaviors of the widowed. I'm always becoming, that is in multiple and diverse ways, and always through my relationship with others. I am calling upon some of Foucault's claims that one has an obligation to tell the truth about oneself. Thus, at this stage, I believe I was able to challenge the structures, the patriarchal structures, and the Zimbabwean customary laws that arrogate women to submissiveness, domesticity, docility, and other various complexities. I found myself reliving many aspects of my story, particularly fear. I've talked about that. And to an extent, I believe I did not give myself time to grieve him. Instead, I think I grieved through my books, because I did my master's in a year, and in 2 years I was done with my PhD. So the process of excavating the old wounds has caused me to re-experience moments of uncertainty. However, there is power in the story, and the value of autoethnography is that it gives a voice to those who have been silenced and othered. In telling their stories, the otherness can dissipate. For years on end, I've been made and I've been mute, a dying voice unable to shape words into a language because of the continuous oppression of women. But Moteme, in her words, says, silence, dreams, gestures, tears, all exist independently. So clothed in my dignity, the only worth garment that I have at this moment, I go my way. Thank you.
Right, so my name is Gabriel Kosiso Okonkwo once again, and my topic is entitled Of Nuptiality and Nigerian Culture, Straight-Faced Attitudes to Patriarchal Structures of Trauma in Lola Shoneyin's The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives. Traditional Nigerian nuptiality is defined within structures which are innately patriarchal and traumatizing for female victims. Polygyny, which is popularly known as polygamy in the Nigerian parlance, is effectively a patriarchal structure of trauma for female victims who are defined within it as wives. Many studies have looked at the different shades of trauma suffered by women and children in different traditional polygynous marriages. This study focuses on the straight-faced attitudes of the female victims in Lola Shoneyin's The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives to the patriarchal structures which enable and cause them to suffer trauma. The study theorizes straight-face as an agential attitude that justifies the female victims' indifference and intolerance to systemic causes of personal discomfort in heteronormative spaces such as polygyny. So I'm going to just give more like a précis of the novel. Then I'll begin to look at how the female characters deploy their agencies. So published in 2010, Lola Shoneyin's The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives made its debut as an auspicious masterpiece of art negotiating public interest on the hegemony of polygyny. The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wife is best appreciated as an appraisal of polygyny in contemporary Nigeria, which contrasts with polygyny in the pre-colonial era. The novel protests the sustained oppression of women in polygynous marriages and exposes the new forms of oppression deployed by patriarchal structures in contemporary times. The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives is a remonstration which tells the story of women's experiences in toxic patriarchal enclaves, dissenting everything it represents for them. The writer seems to be protesting the persisting existence of traditional polygyny in contemporary Nigeria. It is told from the contrasting but mixed point of view of all the characters who in different chapters assume the roles of either a first-person narrator or an omniscient narrator who tells the reader about the struggles of the characters, especially those that are premised on pride and prejudice, pain and oppression. However, Bolanle stands out as a dominant voice in the story. Bolanle is a fourth wife to the polygynist. To effectively give the characters narrative agency, Shoneyin predominantly uses flashback to infuse suspense so as to sustain the reader's interest in the story. In 28 chapters, the writer chronicles the character of polygyny. The novel is essentially about the tyranny and misogynist tendencies of Mr. Ishola, the man simply known as Baba Segi in the narrative. He is a narcissistic and polygynous man who has 4 wives. He has Segi, he has Tokbe, he has Femi, and Bolanle, and then 7 children, Segi, Akin, Tokbe, Afolake, Motu, Femi, and Colin. Baba Segi is a typical Nigerian polygynous man who places no premium or value on women other than that of procreation. His existence as a stock character is simply to perpetuate the ideals of hegemonic patriarchy, which promotes male-centric interests and subordinates those of women. He marries all his wives simply for procreation and cultural ego. Unknown to him, he's impotent, or at least so he claims in the story. And when it comes to infertility impasse in Nigerian traditional marriage, heteronormative patriarchy sees everything wrong with the woman except the man. This explains why Baba Segi does not suspect himself as a fourth carrier or simply he feigns ignorance. All his first 3 wives, Iya Segi, Iya Tokbe, and Iya Femi, having known the patriarchal stereotypes that go with female barrenness in African polygynous marriage, commit adultery and have children who are not biologically Baba Segi's. It is the attitude of his 4th wife, Bolanle, an educated young lady, that brings him to epiphany. Bolanle enters Baba Segi's home as a callow young lady who is simply running away from her hunter past. While she is in Baba Segi's house to mark time and heal psychologically, Baba Segi is not observant enough to see her hurts. He simply sees a fourth wife, no doubt because of his mindset. Meanwhile, she could not blend with the shenanigans of the first 3 wives who share a fraternal sense of camaraderie that helps them hide their childbirth secrets away from their husband. And this is the genesis of the conflict that rises, climaxes, and falls with Baba Segi's encounter with Epiphany and the subsequent denouement. So I'm going to be looking at how the characters deploy ages. I may not be able to look at all the 4 characters, but I'll try to at least look at 3 characters within what time can permit me. So I want to look at that of Bolanle. So from trauma, I entitled this From Trauma to Freedom, Bolanle. Bolanle defies her mother's counsel to jettison the thought of marrying Baba Segi, an oppressive polygynous man. She disobeys her mother not out of defiance or intransigence, but fear of the unknown. Her rape experience makes her distrust and angry and puts her literally at the mercy of opportunities like Baba Segi. Bolanle's experience resonates that of most rape victims who often get disoriented by their experience. And more because they lack love and acceptance from the society that hurts them. On the fateful day, a philanderer offers to give Bolanle, who is stranded in the rain, a ride to her destination, since he's headed for the same end. She innocently accepts the Greek gifts, and the end of the gesture is rape. Many a time, women ingeniously fall into traps of this sort and get seriously hurt. Bolanle's interest in marrying Baba Segi is phony and driven by anger, as she sees her time in Baba Segi's house as an opportunity to study how the patriarchal structures of oppression in polygyny work. This explains why she's not bothered about her inability to bear a child for Baba Segi. This is unlike the other wives who are not as exposed as she is. She represents the trauma that victims of rape suffer and live with. At the instance of a traumatic experience, victims cannot predict their behavioral response. Most victims get depressed and unexplainably hysterical. Usually, they develop a strong sight animosity towards the predator and everything that looks like them. Ironically, Bolanle does not grow this peculiar sight or tactile hostility towards men. However, she harbors the resentment emotionally. Her emotional attitude towards the hegemony of patriarchy is evident in her description of Baba Segi's patriarchal eccentricity. So here she talks about, I'm going to give a quote that talks about how she perceives everything that Baba Segi does as a way of palliating his ego in pretense for love. So I quote, "I wasn't seduced. That buffoon was prepared to take me as I was. He didn't even ask me any questions. Neither did he know a past he could compare my present with. I was lost and didn't want to do anything with my life. He was prepared to take me like that. All he wanted was for me to be his wife. Imagine how appealing that was to me." These lines suggest that Bolanle is perhaps trying to see a man that could prove all her assumptions and stereotypes about men wrong. And Baba Segi, who has the chance to create a good impression, disappoints, just like the rapist. The assertion, "I wasn't seduced," speaks to a dashed expectation. The uncomplimentary and sarcastic use of buffoon in relation to Baba Segi stems from that place of disappointment. Making reference to her past, which Baba Segi does not identify with, shows that she has not healed. Shoneyin seems to be showing us Bolanle's wish that Baba Segi were perhaps a foil character of some kind. She's utterly disappointed to know that there is no difference between the rapist and the polygynist, both who are representatives of the patriarchal system. In Bolanle's confession, "I was lost and didn't want to do anything with my life," in it we see despair and perhaps a very near situation of depression. This is a common trait in trauma victims, and there's usually a lost consciousness and despair reaction, which effectively invites depression whenever a traumatic incident occurs. So not wanting to do anything with her life is that damage of consciousness and reality that usually results in subsequent wrong choices that some victims of trauma suffer. I'd like to go to the deployment of agency by one of the first 3 wives, and this time around, Segi. So I titled this From Trauma to Vengeance, Segi. Baba Segi's first wife, Segi, marries him in fulfillment of a patriarchal agreement called betrothing. She's not given the opportunity to choose or consent to the polygynous arrangement that is made between her mother and Baba Segi. Mama Segi, who is obsessed with the betrothing practice and attracted to the then Mr. Shola, schemes a marital future for her daughter without her consent. Unfortunately, her misguided desperation and callousness betrays her into Mr. Ishola's traps and manipulations. He cajoles her into emptying much of her savings on him with the promise that he will marry her daughter. Vulnerability is one strong weapon that patriarchy uses effectively against women. The male-centric culture impresses it strongly on the society that women are weak and always in need of the mercy and help of men in every area of their lives. The culture trains women to focus on marriage, while men focus on life and the persistent subjugation of women. This brainwashing makes women strongly think they cannot make certain decisions and choices without the help of men. Segi's mother believes that Baba Segi is a good man, that her daughter must not lose. So the money she gives to Mr. Shola, that's Baba Segi, cripples her fufu business, which Segi has been nursing the ambition of inheriting from her mother. So Segi's acceptance to marry Baba Segi is more about vengeance and the need for justice than love. She is ready to recover all her mother's savings, cunningly taken away by Mr. Shola. Hence, he marries him with the hope that someday, and I quote from the novel, Baba Segi will breathe his last one day and my money will return to me. So, hers is a loveless marriage that is nothing but a transaction that will be terminated once all parties are satisfied and placated. Segi is a strong-willed woman who grows up with strong objections for the kind of biased marital arrangement that is made without the consent of the 2 parties involved, especially hers. She tells her mother, Mama, women don't need husband, end of quote. The implication of this strong view about marriage is wandering and half-hearted disposition. So this explains why it is easy for her to connive with her co-wives to cheat on Baba Segi. She enters the marriage without love and respect for her husband that she believes hurts her and her mother. This distrust attitude of vengeance makes it easy for her to hurt the oppressor, who first hurt her and her family. So I'll just, I don't know how much time I still have. 6 minutes. Okay, so I think I can take one more character, then I will just sum it up. So from trauma to cognizance, Iyatokwe. The idea that women are objects and commodities forms part of the evil structures that the characters are engaging. And where objectification and commodification are foregrounded, a transactional relationship is inevitable. Baba Segi's second wife, Iyatokwe, is a recompense to Baba Segi by Iyatokwe's father for a poor cassava yield season, which has failed its contractual terms. Describing her experience at the point of cognition. That's Iyatokwe talking here. Even a child would have worked out why my father was extolling qualities that had previously vexed him. I was a compensation for a failed crop. I was just like the tubers of cassava on the basket. Maybe something given less, something straight, a tuber with eyes, a nose, arms, or 2 legs. Knowing why people extol you is important in determining the nature and character of such a praise. Many times, people pour encomiums with selfish interest on others they see as having achieved great feats in life. This says something about depraved intentionality that is engraved in patriarchal mindset. Iyatokwe's comparison of her awareness with that of a little child speaks of her anger. She sees her father's sudden and unusual demeanor as a derision on her intelligence. Impunity is another feature of toxic patriarchy. Her father is able to brandish such shenanigans before her because of his mindset. Iyatokpe is nothing more than an object or commodity. This explains why men with Iyatokpe's mindset, father's kind of mindset, do not value women empowerment, either through education, self-development, or entrepreneurship. His Ike would prefer women to sit at home and depend solely on the sarcasm and innuendo of phony men. If he can give his daughter out to his friend, Baba Segi, so cheaply, without marital rights or mutual consent, he's capable of doing the worst to any woman. That he gives his own daughter out in exchange for a failed crop transaction says something about the way patriarchal mindset works. The exchange is metaphorical because in his mind, his daughter is comparable to the tubers of cassava in the basket. Maybe something given less, something strange, a tuber with eyes, a nose, arms, and two legs. More intriguing is the fact that he unilaterally takes the decision of transacting his daughter without recourse to the opinion of his wife. That's Segi's, Iyatokpe's mother. So, in this marriage, while she will not want her husband to be disgraced with the moniker an impotent man, she's also careful not to attract to herself the appellation barren. Her cognizance helps her to resolve her quandary of identity and humanity. This is nothing but a straight-faced attitude to an object of inconvenience. She gives the situation the seriousness that it deserves. So I won't be able to take the last character, so I'll just make a few comments about all of this. So what I see Lola Shoneyin doing here is first to bring to life again something we thought was no longer there. Because with the coming of Christianity, Christianity brought monogamy. Before the coming of Christianity, what we had was, polygamy, in quotes. And some of us who read Things Fall Apart, you know what I'm talking about. So what she does here is to make us see that this thing still exists. And because of the background, because she comes from that background, Nigeria is a strong, traditional space. And as much as she is trying to assert her agency as a feminist, she also tries to strike a balance. So what she does in this novel primarily is to give what I would call life agency to those wives. She didn't give them radical agency because they move from one patriarchal space to another patriarchal space. All right. So it was so much about their self-dignity. They were trying to defend, the dignity, their right to self-dignity. All right. And that is what we see here. So that's not trying to distort that patriarchal hegemony was something Lola Shoneyin tries to leave, maybe in reference to culture or whatever. So so we see that that patriarchy manipulates everything just to stay relevant. Okay. Now it's ironical too to imagine that. Because in the end, when he comes to find out that his first 3 wives deceived him by committing adultery, and of course, adultery is something that it's an abomination culturally in many African spaces. Okay, so it's something that is enough for you to send your wife away. So, but it's quite ironical that a man like this decides to forgive. Now, you will think that he does this out of compassion. No. He's actually, from reading the novel, I think in doing that, it's still part of the whole grand scheme of manipulation, because he needs to keep that space. And if he allows them to go because of that, of course, it's like giving them more freedom to fly. And in flying, he's being deconstructed. So it was more about, forgive them, and then let's pretend that all is well. These are my children. So he protects his own interests, and of course, he continues to subjugate the women. So in conclusion, Baba Segi's circumstantial wives, Segi, Iyatokpe, Afems, and Bolale, express their anger to the asphyxiating man-made conditions in their polygynous regimen through actions that are best defined as anger and vengeance, anger and despair, anger and respite, and anger and cognizance. Through these actions, they are empowered with female agency, which the structures of oppression in the novel deny them, and gain justice that has rooting in personal awareness, conviction, and identity. Thank you.
To our presenters, we don't have that much time left, but I'm going to open it up to questions. We're going to have at least 2 rounds of questions. So,
okay, I have 2 for each. Is it fine?
yeah.
Okay. So starting with Zikho. So there was this part you said that the rich auntie movement, and that it's a way for women to assert themselves in the society and community at large. So are you saying that women should have economic power to be able to assert themselves? Oh. Okay, what's your comment about this? You said that certain spaces that do not allow women, for example, Ubuhlanti. What's your comment when you try to address this, like at home, whereby whenever we speak something about feminist or trying to change the way they believe, they would always link it with the European knowledge or what's the best way to address it?
Yes, well, thank you. I'm very sick, I'm not drunk. That's okay. There's a golden thread that connects the 3 of you, I guess. That's why you're in the same space. The issues of the burden, the curse, and I guess a thing around your neck, a noose of some sort. In the respectability politics is Dima. I think, what do they call it? I had a good friend of mine, so I think it's Kuremek Zwa, which is in Shona, which is to be respected, is Dima. So this thing holds you because in your story, Miss B, Zikho, the Udadobawo, there's a thing that I'm going to start with you because the thing that these people, and I think it's boys, would say no to Udadobawo because they don't want to take responsibility. But Udadobawo is still expected to do the work and is only used at that point to say Ndinxila as if it's something negative, Oh, because Udadobawo does everything that they need to do and only go to Udadobawo when the things are bad. Yes. Because things are bad. So even by the time the family when she passed and say no, and then you wonder if the father was still alive, if then that one would be respected and be put in that pedestal. You are only consulted because you are able to but if you are not able to do that, then you are not respected. Yeah. One. And then Miss B, the respectability that you must do everything, you must wear these black clothes, you must sit here and bury the husband, but also because you also don't want to leave, because you wanted to leave at 19, you left at 31 when this person has died, because there's that thing, that respectability thing. I have read the novel Segi as well, and then the reason why stays because he's got his ego and he doesn't love these women. But now that they are impregnated somewhere, it will make him look weak, and there's a shame. So it's this news that I want you to tell us. How do you see it? This thing that keeps you, that imprisons you, the politics of respectability.
Yeah, I think I'll go. Thanks for that thought. I think it goes back to the issue on how we are raised up. You know, the issue of how we are raised up, to say the moment when you get married as a woman, it's like you're being told, now you're going out, you're only going to come and visit. Because remember, even in the African tradition, when you die, you're buried in your husband's burial ground. They don't come and bury you back at home. Like I said, when I started to say that, how was I going to go out of this? It was like I was going to put shame on my face with my parents' name attached, you know, to it. So in as much as I am not, I've got moments of being happy, moments of being sad, moments of going in pain, there's still that thing of saying that I want my parents to see me as that child that they brought up with so much respect and dignity, you know. And Western, if you come from, I grew up in the township, and you know what the township would call Kopos. And every time if when a girl would run away from her husband, the family will make sure that they try and hide it as much as possible, that she's visiting, while they are trying to convince you to go back, you know, no matter how bad it is. So that is how I looked at it. That's why I said, when I left, I did not leave to say, let me go and stay with my parents. I opted to leave the country and go and come and start my life somewhere else where I felt nobody knows about me, about my history. But still, he follows. So he follows me, you say, again, and then I'm like, but it says, till death do us apart. So it's that upbringing of saying we were indoctrinated. Yes. So that is why now we are moving away from that with our own kids to say, do what you want as long as you know where to draw the line. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's all the question of this the expectations from heteronormative patriarchy for masculinity. Those masculine qualities that that structure ascribes to who a man is or what a man should be in the traditional African setting. And for you to better appreciate this, it's all about hypocrisy, really, because you see those normative attributes that the structure gives to who should be a man with the full masculine qualities. And then you know that these ones are really not represented, but because you want to fit in by force. We see an Okonkwo who deliberately becomes, terrible to his wife. He knows on the inside, he knows this is wrong, okay? But he just has to conform to what the culture is saying. He kills a boy who calls him father, not because ordinarily he wants to commit murder, because he wants to be seen as being strong in that context. So this man too, you find a man who ordinarily would have, in the real traditional sense of it, when a woman commits adultery, I mean, for some of it, if you juxtapose it with some of the events in the Bible, the woman, the adulterous woman who comes and all of that, in the typical African context, is a serious crime. Mm-hmm. But why does he forgive? Does he forgive because he loves those women? No. And as a matter of fact, he didn't woo them. Remember the circumstance, how they all ended up in it. So they don't love him, and neither does he. So he just has them for sexual pleasure and for procreation. Okay? So it was about the space. Oh, if I allow them to do that, people will know that I'm impotent. They will know that the fault is mine. Because in those days, it's always the finger goes to the woman. So he would know that he's impotent, but he wouldn't want to acknowledge it. So if he allows them to go, and people begin now to ask, why are you out of your husband's house? It was because of this or because of that. Oh, you committed adultery. Oh, he's impotent. So, please stay so that my secret will not leak. So they have their own secrets, and his own secret he doesn't want the public to. So it's more like mutual agreement to protect secrets. So it's all that culture of, at the end of the space too, that space of hegemony. I must continue to control those women. If I allow them to go, they will then expand their agency. They will then suddenly realize that I can become much more than what I was able, because the adultery was first for asserting their self-dignity. Because of course some people will argue that they were necessarily protecting the man. Yes, so that people would know his input. But first, they protected, because if it wasn't about sizing agency, what they would normally do is to keep quiet. Yeah. And then eventually this man will find out that these women are not having children. And when the culture wants to portray, they will say these women are barren. All right? They wouldn't want to accept that the fault is theirs. So that I won't be called barren and be traumatized, let me do this and first save my face. And then in the process, okay, the argument will also surface that I am also saving this man's face. So they assert their own agency. Because if it was about radical agency, then these women would think of other ways of expressing, breathing fresh air. But they do that and they still stay in that regiment. I don't know if you understand. So, and then this man, in the end, is protecting this regiment. And then Bolale, who is already having the Western awareness, you have to go, please leave, so that you don't pollute these ones that are still relatively innocent. So he allows her to go. Not so much because he wants her freedom, but so that there won't be pollution. And that's reminiscence of what happened recently. When I remember some of the events in history, remember the Tsar of Russia, how monarchies were dismantled in the world, and then recently when Charles was being his coronation, some people were saying, no to monarchy, and so how we quickly need to silence this one so that they won't pollute everybody to go against, So it's a structure. And then the hegemons will always want to protect the interest. Everything you see them do that has the appearance of good, the common good, is always deception, hypocrisy. And that is what we see here. So it's a structure. Patriarchy defines the qualities of masculinity for a man. And there are some people who don't just want to think outside of that structure. And Baba Segi is a typology of that kind of a typical African man.
Okay, let me just quickly, thank you Naomi for your questions. So when I was thinking about the rich aunt movement and the woman's ability to assert herself or to reassert herself, I didn't necessarily think that because of the fact that she is rich or she is the rich aunt, then she buys herself out of an oppressive situation. Because even rich women or wealthy women are open to abuse, right? They can also be, even their wealth can be something that can be used against them, because they can always be told, it's because you have an income, now you think you are a man, or you think you're better than all of us. Ne? So, but then I try to make the argument that maybe if we could look to the rich aunt movement, we could say that, women are actually attempting to put themselves first, even in the midst of these expectations on them because of culture, because of men's selfishness and patriarchal conditioning, right? So that it doesn't buy them out of an oppressive situation. That's still women at the end of the day, and patriarchy will always reproduce itself to impose itself on women. So looking at the idea of the crown and the fact that women are said not to be allowed to go in, and when we try to bring this up in our families, we are accused of bringing Western Euro-American knowledge, which distorts our culture. But then I would like to argue that even this so-called patriarchy that they are claiming to be African or even imposing on African cultures, it's actually a Euro-American construct. It is an act of colonialism. So that it then calls on us to question the so-called Africanness that they claim to be protecting and to also be to be advocating for. Because whatever they say must be an end, which is let's go back to our roots or where we were. Like, whose roots are we going to go back to? Because there will always be that notion or that event where they will always want to remind us, but actually a woman should wear a skirt, but then in the end it allows us to say, actually a pre-colonial African man never wore pants in the first place. So that it speaks to how these neo-traditionalists use Euro-American interventions to also impose their own hegemonic dominance in their so-called recreation of what is known as African culture. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, also I agree with you, Ubanyan, that is a song that is sang by young men to shift blame from their own actions to Udadobawo. Because they're like, Dadobawo, you failed us. You are the one who should have done this, that, and the other. Ne? And if Udadobawo is not a real woman, I'm if the Kosiso, she doesn't keep the key where the alcohol is being served. Ne? She's just another child in the family. Because I also try to show Uba, even the younger Dadobawos can then attempt to hijack the role of Umafungwasho, Udadobawo Umafungwasho. To say, I might just take care of my children, you can be the nanny, I'll give you money, but then when it comes to serious conversations within the family, I'll speak to the rich, relatively educated one. And so it also, this thing of irresponsibility pits women against each other. Whereas men can protect themselves to say, yeah, you see, look at these women, they don't like each other, you know? And so this thing of irresponsibility is also a divisive device. It seeks to divide. I'm not sure about conquering, because I mean, you are a conquered black man, you think you can conquer women, but yeah, I think that's where I'm at with that right now.
Okay, I'm going to take the last two questions and then we will go.
Oh, okay. I want to ask Miss Bigel. About this part whereby you said it was indoctrination. Do you mean indoctrination as in school and at home and your aunties that made you stay and understand the kind of situation? Because, for example, I'm also from Zimbabwe, but I came to South Africa when I was in 2010. I was still in preschool, so I got the so I got the South African education system. I don't have Vatete, which is the auntie. It was just me and my mom. And the Xhosa culture has influenced me a lot, and my friends. So now, for me, the indoctrination thing doesn't work. They do visit, they're trying to teach me. I was like, where did you get that? So I feel like if we move from Zim and then you stay with other culture, for you to go back, I just don't understand it. So I want to give a Xhosa, a Zimbabwean custom that they practice a lot, which I don't even understand. Whereby if the girl child gets pregnant at home, the mother is the one who's questioned. And she must give explanation to such an extent that the father is allowed to kick her out, that she couldn't raise the girl child at home because they are both, there's this word I don't want to call, but it means a woman who sleeps around. So she sleeps around, she teaches the daughter that. So and it's good enough to chase away the daughter and the wife just out of the home, and the father can remarry. So they're just out. So the women are put in a position whereby they have to beg the man, they're even beaten, they can't say anything, the fault is put on her. So there was an incident at home that happened. So for my own understanding and the level of education I have, I was like, so are you meaning that is it only the male that has the responsibility of raising a child? Had the child was it on a graduation day, they would say, father's, family, wara. They never compliment the woman. So how would you say we challenge such things, and they're still so fixed about them? Yeah.
Okay, then we just okay.
Okay, let me go. Okay, mine is not a question. Thank you, Asika, for mine is not a question. But when we speak about Africa and Africanness, we always tend to speak about patriarchy. And we forget that in Africa there is matriarchy. Udadobawo is a matriarch. She is not in competition with the patriarchs. Udadobawo is as you said, she's an institution in Accra. So now, when we make a mistake when we always start with patriarchy when we speak of her, because now we are taking away her power. She's a matriarch. And we understand that existed in Africa. So let us stop looking at it from that side, because now I always look at myself as a matriarch. I'm not fighting with men. I'm not in competition with you. I'm doing what I'm doing because of who I am. And then the other thing is, not completely sure about this one, but the other thing is that there's umafungwashe, there is inkulu, okay? But even in her position, Udadobawo as umafungwashe, if the ancestors say there is a chosen one, even though when Udadobawo, umafungwashe, and you hold this position of power, but then now when we choose that one that you say is economically empowered, Udadobawo as a matriarch, it is her role then to say, I'm going to be in support of what the ancestors have chosen. You are the chosen one, whether you are chosen spiritually or economically in your role to uplift the family. So her role is not to try and hold on to that power, but it is to say that let us do what is best for the family, then I just support the chosen one. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
I understand, but I disagree.
No, but we talk about it over.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I'm not sure.
Thank you so much, Shoneyin.
I'm not sure.
Okay, my mind has so busy. You talked about the issue of, is it indoctrination, yeah. And I want to say, I understand where you're coming from because like you left home early. But then if you look at us, I was talking with, I think it's Mr. when I was telling you, I'm doing a countdown in 2 weeks' time, 2-3 weeks' time, I'm going to be 45. Mm-hmm. So, and then I was like, so if you look back during that time when I got married, that is like around 26 years ago. And where we are at now, there are a lot of things that have changed. Like during our time, the moment when you start like maybe and everything else, the next thing you're being told, go and visit your auntie. Over Tete, because that was her role now to try to talk to you about, you see now, my brothers told you, you are growing up, you're going to start menstruating, this is what is going to happen, you know, all those, taking you through that womanhood rights, you understand. So that is why at the end of the day, when she was talking about Udadobawo in Shona, that we say Vatete. And Vatete in the Shona culture has got so much powers that she can even stop a marriage to hold.
Yeah.
They can support me on that. Yeah. Like you'll find that maybe your husband will come and say, I'm asking for the hand in marriage, but we're just going to have a small wedding in church for us to put our rings. And then you decide to make it fully blown. They can tell you this is not what you said to us when you came. Yeah. So we're not partaking in that. So that's why I said that now we're living in that era whereby society plays a very huge role. Remember, even our learning institutions are the microcosm of what happens within the society. So what happens within our homes and the society tends to cascade in the universities. As we say, even the universities themselves, they've got that role of dismantling, you know, these structures that have been holding us for such a very long time, yeah.